Now, completely hopeless. This is how the Prime Minister appeared to describe the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, in private WhatsApp messages published today by his former advisor, yes, Dominic Cummings. In an expansive new blog, Mr. Cummings presents a picture of a government in utter disarray during the early days of the pandemic. Our political correspondent, Liz Bates, has more.
Did you really think Matt Hancock was useless, sir? Why didn't you sack him?
Words said in private, now made public by who else but Boris Johnson's former aide-turned-enemy, Dominic Cummings.
Is this now just a vendetta, Mr. Cummings and Mr. Hancock? Mr. Cummings, should the Prime Minister resign?
Today, he's released what he says are private WhatsApp messages between him and the Prime Minister. The subject, the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. In a message sent on the 27th of March, Mr. Cummings criticises Mr. Hancock for failing to increase COVID testing capacity. The Prime Minister's response, totally hopeless. In another message sent the next morning, Mr. Cummings says there aren't enough ventilators being bought. The Prime Minister replies, it's Hancock. He's been hopeless. Then a month later, another message from the Prime Minister calling PPE a disaster and saying the only solution might be to replace Mr. Hancock with Michael Gove.
But in fact,
it all started with this Commons Committee appearance last month.
I said repeatedly to the Prime Minister that he should be fired.
When he accused the Health Secretary of lying about testing, PPE and about whether patients had been released untested into care homes. Claims the Health Secretary has strongly denied.
Are you hopeless, Mr. Hancock? I don't think so.
And he wasn't the only one feeling the heat today. In an exhaustive blog post, Mr. Cummings described the Prime Minister as a man who just wants to make money and have fun, who spends meetings telling rambling stories and jokes before shouting forward to victory, doing a thumbs up and pegging it out of the room before anybody can disagree.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
The latest Cummings revelations emerged just 20 minutes before Prime Minister's questions, but Boris Johnson was spared by the Labour leader, who didn't mention them, leaving many of his MPs privately frustrated. The Health Secretary did eventually come under pressure, but from his own side and on another front, the latest delay to lockdown.
This is not normal. This is the dystopia which I stood here and forecast on the day we went into lockdown.
That emergency has now passed, and yet freedoms are still withheld, and the government will not allow us to assess for ourselves the risks that we are prepared to encounter in our ordinary, everyday lives. The government
divisions in the Commons, but from Downing Street, a show of unity despite Dominic Cummings, with a spokesman this afternoon insisting that the Prime Minister still has confidence in his Health Secretary.
well, MPs have now backed an extension of England's emergency COVID restrictions until July the 19th, but 60 MPs voted against. Let's go back to Liz now. Liz, 60 MPs.
Yes, well, that debate is the one that you just heard from, some extracts from it there. It's been going on in the House of Commons for 4 hours. It's on, as you said, the government's plan to delay lockdown easing in England until July the 19th. And within the past sort of 10, 20 minutes, we've just had the result of that vote. It was a comfortable win for the government, 461, only 60 MPs voted against it. So it is quite a comfortable win, actually, for the government. A significant number of those 60 MPs will be the Tory rebels, the COVID recovery group, or the sort of lockdown sceptics, if you like. Labour did criticise the government in that debate. They blamed them for this delay. They said that they hadn't got the Delta variant effectively under control, but in the end they did vote with them. We heard, of course, from the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. He said that the significant change in the data had led to a change in the dates, as they had always said they would do. What we haven't heard, of course, from the Health Secretary is a rebuttal or a response to the latest criticisms that have come at him via Dominic Cummings. So that's maybe something to look out for in the next few days.